Good afternoon, everyone. You're all very welcome here to our 2026-2027 Fulbright Irish Awards Completing Your Application webinar. I'll just let the virtual room fill up here for just another moment. Grab yourselves a glass of water or a cup of tea. So my name is Sarah West. I'm the Deputy Executive Director and Awards Program Officer here at the Fulbright Commission in Ireland, and I am joined by our Executive Director, Dr. Dara Fitzgerald, here today. And the goal of our session this afternoon, ahead of our application deadline of the 23rd of October, is to be on hand to answer any questions that you may have as you are going along completing your Fulbright Irish Award application. We hope that we have folks from both scholar applications, student applications, and the FLTA program joining us. Everyone has the same deadline of the 23rd of October 2025, unless you're applying for the Schumann program. And the deadline is 4 p.m. sharp Irish time. A reminder that your recommenders as well have the same deadline, and you can track your recommender status in your application portal. Any questions, as a reminder, can come to us here at the Commission at awards@fulbright.ie. And we'll try to go through as many as we can today. Bit of housekeeping, we're going to use the Q&A function from Zoom today, so pop in your questions there. When you're writing your question, please note which program you're applying for, and that can help us best to address your queries. And any questions that are more specific, you can email us to awards@fulbright.ie. And just a reminder that we are here talking about the Fulbright program today, but as we are the Ireland United States Commission for Educational Exchange, we also oversee Irish language funding in the US and Education USA. And here's just a visual representation of why everyone comes to the Fulbright program, because it is about the people and it being a cultural exchange program. So I hope that comes through as we address your questions today. I'll stop sharing there and it stopped. You should be able to see some questions coming in.
Okay, Sarah, as we wait for questions to come in, I guess 2 or 3 questions we could just answer between us is typically people say, how long should my personal statement be? And I think our approved kind of recommendation is that it's around 2 pages. Not too small a font as well. Bear in mind that real people have to read these, so just make that easy for them. And the other question that often comes up, obviously, is related to the study objectives. And again, we're looking at around 2 pages for that detail. Is there any parts then that you think cover off kind of main questions?
Yeah, I think that point about the 2 pages for the Fulbright student application, the research or study objective, that's 2 pages long. And for all programs, you need to have what's called the Fulbright statement, which is the Fulbright personal statement. And that is 2 pages in length as well. And in general, if you're concerned about which section to be uploading your supplemental materials to within each program's application guidelines, it will let you know which section to upload to. But if at any point you're unsure, don't worry. The applications come into us as one solid PDF. So even if you think you might have uploaded it into additional information when it should go in country-specific materials, don't fret. We will receive what you upload.
Sarah, I'm just going to answer a question from John. He's asking a query about the Library of Congress because we're currently seeing a US government shutdown, so the library isn't available and he's not getting a connection. John, I would presume over a period of time, people will be unfurloughed and you will be able to get back to that. I don't think we would see that as a barrier to you applying. At some point, you would need, obviously, a letter to say that they are happy to host you. But I think it's enough for you to say at this moment that this is your intention to go there and obviously keep your engagement going. From your point of view, obviously you want to know that they will be able to host you, but in terms of your application, I think this is it's okay to proceed on the basis that this is where you're going to go.
Dara,
Sarah, you agree with that?
I think that makes a really great point too, for anyone who's concerned of, I won't have my letter of invitation, also called the letter of affiliation, by the time I submit my application. Unless you're applying for a sponsored award that specifically requires it as part of the application, it is not absolutely mandatory to have it at the time of application. You can flesh out in your application the steps you have taken to make an affiliation, and that helps strengthen your application. Once you do receive a letter of affiliation, you can email it on to us as soon as you receive it. And then by the time you're going for interview, if you are shortlisted, we want to make sure that you have an affiliation established, and certainly by the time you'd be taking up your award. So thanks. I will dismiss that question there. We have an anonymous query from, do we need to include dependents in the section in the application portal if they are coming to visit for 2 weeks during a 3-month stay? So this is a great question, and one that's commonly asked. So for dependents, we help process J2 visas for anyone accompanying a Fulbright scholar or Fulbright Irish student when they come for over 90 days. So dependents are allowed to visit you in the US for less than 90 days, and they would travel over on what's called the ESTA program. So for your question, if someone wants to come for 2 weeks, that's no problem. They would apply through the normal ESTA requirement for those visiting the US.
Sorry, there was a question from Letitia, and I'm trying to understand the specifics here. We've been joining a research team in Penn State, so you'd not be working on a personal research subject as such. Is that the issue? Well, at its heart, Fulbright is a cultural engagement program, so we're less concerned about the actual work unless it's clinical trials. So that could be a different issue. And I would say look at the guidelines associated with that. But if this is where you're going, if this is a student program, it can be research if it applies back to your current program of research. If you're doing a master's or a PhD, then you should look to see, does that apply back to it? If it's a scholar award and you're going to do it, as it stands on the question you're asking, I don't see an issue associated with that, because you're going over to engage and to do research in the US. So if you have many more specific details, you could certainly email them to us at awards.ie, and we can come back to you. Sorry, awards@fulbright.ie even, and we could come back to you with a very specific answer on that.
I can see a question from John. I made a small mistake in my application, forgot to add the country code on a recommender's phone number. I don't see that being a major issue. If you leave that with us, I can also follow up with our colleagues at IIE if there's a way to, we could add that in. I don't think that would be an issue. John, you can leave that with us. And if you want to pop us an email, that would probably be best, and we can ensure that we followed up with that. Thanks. Orla, for Fulbright Scholars Teaching and Research Award, will I be asking for my own class, or just can I joining existing courses already being taught in our departments? So if you're designing a teaching and research category proposal, you would be able to tease that out with your host contact for what would be best to put forward within their department. So it could be perhaps that you're going to be joining courses that exist to be teaching there, or maybe you're proposing to bring on your own course. That's something to liaise with your host contact about and see how it fits into your overall proposal. I hope that helps. And if you want to follow up further, you can certainly send us an email.
Bailey, is a question. The short answer to your question, Bailey, will be yes. But it's certainly about if you already know where you're going, then I think that's going to be positive. Again, it'll be written into why this is part of your program, why the time is right now, and I think you've already put those questions in there. You've accepted and deferred. So I think that's probably it's a good plan to look at the study objectives and career goals. So best of luck with that.
There's a question from an anonymous attendee about applying for the Human Rights LLM at Notre Dame. Do students have to apply through the university page also? Does this have to be completed before the Fulbright 23rd deadline? So you would have to still apply to the institution you want to take up a course at. Sometimes and this is important to note for everyone, there are discrepancies between, oh, I applied for the Fulbright Award, that's me done. But if you are applying to be on a degree-seeking program, you need to ensure that you are apply to and are accepted onto that program, and then would also need to apply and be accepted for the Fulbright Award there too. I hope that helps answer your question.
There, it's a good answer, and it's a broader answer as well in terms of, as you've said, for across a lot of these type of programs. But it comes down to the basic point as well. If you are looking to go somewhere, make sure ultimately that a host will accept you. If they don't, unfortunately, the proposal you'll put in won't be something that you'll be able to match. Either that you haven't been accepted for a course. You can apply for a number of courses. That's okay if you're a student. And if you're going to do research or you're a scholar, again, you might find that you have a we would consider that you would think about a backup plan, but ultimately you're going on a program to do a body of work, but have an experience in the States. So having your host there is a fundamental requirement. And it's really less about us and it's more about you having a host and somewhere to go in the States. So I think it's just worth underpinning that whole comment there.
Great. There's another anonymous query. What can you do if you're applying to more than one program in the US? Maybe you could clarify, you're only allowed to apply to one Fulbright Award per cycle. So you wouldn't be allowed to apply to more than one Fulbright program. So you'd want to clear that up. If it's that you're an Irish student applicant and you're looking to apply to more than one master's program, say you can do that and list your preference, your ranking, and explain in your application which programs you are seeking to apply to. Dara, is there anything else you want to add to that? Okay.
Just looking at one from Mary Claire to a PhD student applying for a research visit. When you're putting in your, if it makes sense to put in citations or the rationale for why you need to go there or a small amount of information, potentially that's okay. Just bear in mind, this will go to people who are specialists in your area, technical specialists in their area. So they will be able to figure out, they don't necessarily need to know all of the background detail. It's more that it adds up and the work that you want to do, that it makes sense. So I would say the amount of citations or the amount of tables and graphs and things you put in, I would say don't overdo that because you really want to more explain the work that you want to do there. And you can obviously put links that they can go find the rest of the information.
So for John's query about a PhD student, if you'd be applying to the Irish Fulbright Student Awards, the minimum is 4 months for an application. So you just need to make sure that it's a question. I'm not sure if I would need a full 3 months to process that material. The minimum proposed duration is 4 months. So you need to craft an application of that minimum amount.
Just to add to that as well, Sarah, I mean, again, I keep coming back to the point that this is ultimately we're not actually here to fund research or the areas that you're working on. Ultimately, we're here for cultural experience. So if you find that the project you're writing and the expectation that you've dovetailed it end to end, that you're going to cram everything in, that you arrive at day one, you start work and you finish the last day, you're going out of the lab or you're going out of the course and all that. That's not a Fulbright experience. You do have to give yourself time to land, to leave, to create the connections, to have that experience. That's the fundamental of it. So if you're only focusing on the research, that's going to be that'll be something it's more difficult to sell in your application. If you're talking about all the other things you're going to do and the time you'll have around it, and that you'll have time to have an experience, that's a much better approach to take.
Great. Thanks, Dara. We have a question about the LLM in Boston. I was wondering what support is included as part of a Fulbright Student Award. So on our website, for the description of the LLM Award at Boston, you can see there that it is the award, the Fulbright Award, which is used to cover part of your living expenses, but not for fees. You would also be getting a 75% tuition waiver from Boston College, and that is a tuition remission equivalent to the amount that it states on the website. Then from a general Fulbright commission side, you're going to be getting support around the J1 visa application. Those are all the required documents that successful applicants need to provide the commission. And then we have an orientation session that we take everyone through before they depart. And we're here in Ireland to help you throughout that process. And then you are supported by the Institute of International Education once you're over in the US. So that's sort of the kind of wraparound support that the Commission, i.e. in the Fulbright program, provides to Fulbright students. Anything else, Dara, that you want to add?
You. Sarah, I'm just going to answer, there was an anonymous attendee. So this webinar is not for an alumni scholarship. On the basis of that small bit of information, I'm going to say no. I'm not sure specifically what that really relates to, but this wouldn't be this wouldn't be an alumni scholarship. If you are a Fulbright alum, we do have an alumni award that goes out every year, but that's not being dealt with here today. And then was a question here, it's a good question here from another anonymous attendee. I've over 15 years of professional experience and have been accepted to an MBA program. For my references, I've selected 2 professional referees and 1 academic referee who could speak to my professional academic background. Is that okay? The short answer is yes, that'll be fine. Obviously, they'll need to state where they're from and that they have to be at a level that could speak to your experience. But from looking at this question here, I would say that is okay. If you had any more specific details behind that, you can certainly contact awards at Fulbright.ie, but I suspect you already have what you need covered.
Great. Dara, I think that connects then to the other question regarding the references. Should they be more industry or academic related? So it really depends on having someone who can speak to your work. We also recommend that if you're going to have your 3 references, that one of them be from outside your home institution. There's a second part to this question as well. Also, if I'm seeking a 2-year master's, but the award only covers 10 months, that is typically the case in the US that a master's program may be longer than a Fulbright award. So that would mean that your Fulbright award funding covers you for the duration of the grant that you're offered, and then the applicant is required to meet the funding needs of their program that they're enrolled on independently of their Fulbright award.
I'm just looking at another anonymous attendee asking question, is the orientation session on a specific date normally? Well, there are a number of different orientations, and depending on the program and depending on the decision by the program managers, they can vary. So there might be a number of potential dates that you could be invited to. The FLTA program, for instance, they would typically be around in probably the end of November, but it can change year in, year out.
Oh, for the General Irish Awards orientation, though, we typically have a session in June-ish. We usually would have our ceremony in June, and then we try to coordinate everyone there, and our awards ceremony usually happens on the same day.
Sorry, thanks, Sarah. What I was talking about was the orientation that then happens in the US as well.
The
So
global
there's a
one.
follow-on opportunity. I guess the detail was more, the question was kind of open.
Yeah,
Thanks very much.
yeah.
Okay.
There's a few points, so you get good opportunities to engage both with your cohort and then with your program globally, because you might be at an institution in the US where there's other Fulbrighters from countries around the world, because it is a global program. There's a question, so if applying for a number of masters in the US, if a prospective applicant has already spent 1 year working in a particular state, would applying for LLMs in that same state have an impact on the success of their application? Would it be favorable to choose another state? So you cannot be residing in the US at the time of making your application. That would deem you ineligible. If you want to email us in, if you're curious about your status to be able to apply, that would probably be the best way to address that question. And if you've spent extensive time in the US, we really do, whether you're a student, FLTA, or a scholar, we'd love to see that you're looking to widen your horizons and explore other spaces in the US and really make a case for why that place needs a Fulbrighter and why it's different and adds to other work that you've already done.
Thanks, Sarah. There's another one here we kind of answered already, but the maximum duration of the student award is 10 months. If the master's program you're applying for 12 months in duration, does Fulbright supply additional assistance? The answer to that is unfortunately no.
There's a great question there about, do you have any advice on crafting your Fulbright statement? And I suppose there's in the instructions, there are guidelines about how to do this, but also just we can share the Fulbright statement is really about you and the heart of the Fulbright program. This is not where you rehash your CV or talk through what you've already covered in your application. You do want to weave it in, but this is where you can reveal and highlight who you are as a person and as a cultural ambassador from Ireland to go to the US and really weave in how you align with the ethos of the program, why this funding body is different from any other funding body, because it's more than that. It was set up, in the aftermath of World War II. It has stood for so many years. And why do you weave in to become another thread in that tapestry that has been the Fulbright program all these years? So that's just a general overview of what kind of theme we're looking for when you make that statement.
I think, Sarah, I'm going to jump in and just add to that. You're absolutely correct in all those areas. But it is, and we say this over and over again, it's very much about you. We are looking for the variety, the person behind it all. We don't want the AI version of you. Our applications are read by humans, they're not read by AIs. So it's really an opportunity for you to talk about you, but it should make sense for you as well. And if you have crafted it in any way that maybe is not a fit for you, if you get to interview level, it's harder to sell that. So it should absolutely make sense to you, from the very beginning, and the kind of full version of you. This is a really important part of the Fulbright program. We're ultimately most interested in the people. It's people that we invest in. So please write about you through the lens of you, not necessarily the personal statement through the lens of your position or the area of research or discipline that you're working on, but very much focus it on you.
Great. There's another question that comes in. If I come from Asia, not belonging to Europe, can I apply for this scholarship? So this is a great question. And our awards, the Irish Fulbright Awards from the Commission in Ireland, are for Irish citizens and UK and EU citizens who have been resident in the Republic of Ireland for 5 or more years. So if you're not falling within one of those nationalities, you won't be eligible to apply through the Fulbright Commission in Ireland. However, as we were saying, the Fulbright program is global. So if you find the Fulbright Commission or the Fulbright post within the country that you hold your nationality, you might be able to apply through that commission. So it doesn't exclude you from the Fulbright program. It just would be that you're not eligible to apply through the Fulbright Commission in Ireland.
Another good question then is, does Fulbright, from an anonymous person, does Fulbright provide any guidance or resources on how to plan or supplement finances during the war period, student loans, etc.? There's two parts of that answer. One is that there are so many institutions and so many different places you're going, state laws can completely impact that. So there isn't a specific answer. Generically, I would say, obviously, you want to reach out to the institution, see if they have any support scholarships, and it can be quite, many do, that they have some sort of support for you, depending on how long you're going as well. We only support maybe the first year, but if you're looking for support in the second year, while you're there, that's a very good opportunity to look to augment it through some sort of support, either some sort of teaching support whilst you're there, or some sort of scholarship that may be available. Beyond that, it's a harder thing. You could certainly look to see if there's any Irish American groups or if there's other support. We don't necessarily have a problem as well. If you apply for and you get another grant, we don't have necessarily an issue that you can use that to augment. I would say though, funny enough, there's an interesting outcome is that many universities do have a cap on the amount of funding that you can bring to it as well, so that they won't supply any funding if you exceed that cap. So it's there isn't a singular answer, but I would say starting point is to look at the institution you're going to and see what they advise. Talk to the international office, and see what advice that they can provide for you.
I can see a question from Barry. What institution do I put down in my application? My current workplace or university? So I'm not sure which program you're applying to, but if you are applying for the Irish Scholar Program, it's what affiliation you would want to have yourself represented from. So if you're representing your workplace, that's great. If you're representing your university institution, put that down. I hope that helps.
Apologies, sorry, I was muted there. I better answer that again. The question was, I'm an Irish resident at Oxbridge. Will I qualify under the Irish program? And the short answer is, if you're an Irish citizen, yes, you can apply.
A great question come in about the Irish Scholar Program. Is it possible to commence a 3 or 4 month Irish Scholar Award at any point within the academic year? So for setting up your award proposed dates for the Irish Scholar Program, the earliest start date we'd recommend is the 1st of September. If there's a special case that it has to be August of 2026, we can sometimes work with that, but we'd like to have enough lead-in time between the time you get your award offer and processing your J1 visa. All awards would have to be finished by the 31st of July. I believe this is also in our application guidelines. So you can take your 3-month, 4-month award offer and try to fit that in with your host to see what time works best for you. But it would need to be a continuous period, sometime between the 1st of September and then 3 months back from the 31st of July. So you're looking at April.
It's a great question here. For the study research objective, is there a specific structure that Fulbright recommends for the 2 pages? And can we include our name in the document, or is it supposed to remain anonymous? So there's two questions there. The first would say that if you look at the guidelines, we have given some detail around what you might consider writing about. But again, it's an open competition. It's about you. It's your delivery to it. So we don't want to be too prescriptive in that. The second part is, can we include our name in the document, or is it supposed to remain anonymous? It's not anonymous. You're always there. So our applications are not anonymized. The reviewers and we will see who you are, and we want to know who you are.
There's a question to clarify. I have spent 1 year working in New York City on the J1 graduate visa, but I am resident in Ireland. So if you have a certain type of J1 visa that you've held previously, if you'd like to email the commission with the category of that type of J1 visa, we can confirm if you would be eligible with the type of J1 that you had held.
Just another question here. Would having experience in traveling and having already lived abroad and engaged with a variety of individuals from cultural backgrounds, would this be relevant to empathize in your application? Again, comes back to the question, this is part of what makes you you and your experiences. And so certainly talk about all of your experience, including the fact that you have, it doesn't necessarily gain you any special part of it. It's a proof, I suppose, at some level that you can engage outside of Ireland. But again, it's more that it's a part of your experience and what makes you you. So absolutely talk about you and those experiences.
I can see an anonymous one. Should the project plan be written for a lay audience and avoid field-specific jargon, or can you assume that the applications will be evaluated by experts with experience in your field or adjacent fields? So this is a great question. At the review stage, your application is going to be reviewed by discipline experts in your field. So you can include your expert language there. But do bear in mind that your application at interview stage will be interpreted by people who may not be experts in your field. So just hold that in your mind too as you do address a wider audience and make it available to folks who might not be expert in your field. But certainly it will be reviewed by experts in your field.
There's a question here from Jack. I think we kind of covered it already, but just to specifically say that, so we have, when applying for the Fulbright EPA Awards, is it necessary to be accepted to a master's program by the end of October? Only if the master's program you want to apply to is closing for applications for 26, 27 by the end of October. So it's really defined by the program that you want to apply for.
There's a question about where to apply, and the best place to start is on www.fulbright.ie, and you can navigate then to either the Irish Scholar, Irish Student, or Irish FLTA webpage and click Start Your Application, and you'll be emailed the application link and instructions then.
There's another good question here, and is it from anonymous attendee? And is it okay to a two-stop of some capacity, one main institution, and then maybe to an exchange within for 2 weeks in another institution? The short answer is yes. Now, depending on how long you're going for, because I don't know if it's going for 3 months or something, bear in mind that if it's a very short time, part of what you're doing is a cultural exchange. So give yourself time to embed in the primary space that you're going to. But ultimately, you know, if it makes sense, and this is really where it should make sense, but if it does make sense that you need to go to another institution and they're happy to host you, and maybe that you remain connected with your primary institution, that should be okay. Again, if you had a little bit more detail, you could email awards@fulbright.ie and we could take a better look at that. I would suspect it's probably okay, but it's going to be about the overall story that you're telling.
Yeah, that's great, Dara. And I think it's just important to note that for purposes of processing a J1 visa, you would need to have a primary host institution. If you're looking to split your time, you can explain that in your application. But then when it comes down to logistics, if things need to be tweaked, we can discuss that further.
Karen here has a question. If my PhD is registered in Ireland, but my research analysis will be mostly carried out in the US, am I eligible for the Fulbright Student Award? I'm trying to read through that, but if you're going out to the States for 10 months potentially, I mean, that's the Fulbright part of it. If you then can go subsequently, that's something else. So I don't think that you're not eligible, but Sarah, you might have some commentary on that.
Yeah, if you want to email us in to explain your situation, if it says your PhD is registered in Ireland, but my research analysis will be mostly carried out in the US. So if you're going to be residing in the US, or if you are residing in the US, that would make it not eligible for you to be taking on an Irish Student Award if you're already in the US. But email us and we can answer your question more fully. Also, the question about the J1 category intern visa. We're not the U.S. Embassy Consular Services, so if you could put that to us in an email, we can follow up to find out more about your specific J1 previous history and your eligibility. That would be best.
Interesting question from an anonymous attendee as well for the Visiting Scholar Award, and this probably the answer is going to apply to all of the awards, although the FLTA is slightly different. For the Visiting Scholar Award, what exactly does the grant cover? Flights and accommodation. So it's really your flights and it's your monthly management, and that monthly management is calculated by the US State Department based on the city and the university that you're going to go to. So it's really your living expenses and your flights. You may need, depending on what your needs are, you may need to supplement that as well. That's always going to be part of the requirement, and potentially if you're if there's something else you want to do, that may be something additional you need to do. But it is flights and your monthly management based on per year living.
And for your study objectives, should they be written to be understood by a layperson or non-expert? As we mentioned, the review stage, you're going to be reviewed by an expert in your discipline, so you can certainly tailor it to them. And also just bear in mind that overall, you do want to appeal to those who may not be expert in your field when you come to the interview stage, that you'll be interviewed by folks who may not be discipline experts.
To which extent is this from anonymous attendee? To which extent is it appropriate to include personal sensitive information in the personal statement if it is relevant to your experience in academia and how this pertains to Fulbright? Not totally sure about that. I would say put in the information. If you're comfortable with it, put it in. We keep your sensitive data, we keep your information protected in that sense. Now, it will be shared with, just understand, obviously the commission, the team here, the commission will see this, and also our reviewers and interviewers will see this. So I think you need to consider it in that context. If you're comfortable, share it, and it relates specifically to your experience and you're comfortable to share it, well, then that's your decision to make on that.
Great. There's a question, do we have to submit the medical/health assessment at the initial time of application, or does this come later? So the Fulbright medical form is not part of your application process. It's only required once you are offered a Fulbright grant and choose to accept, that then a Fulbright medical form is part of your J1 visa documentation to get that process going.
Question from an awardee says, born in Northern Ireland, would the Irish Commission be eligible to apply, or should it be the UK Commission? Actually, we do have a lot of information about that, and it's specifically, we would say that if you're an Irish citizen, apply to the Irish Commission. If you're a UK citizen, apply to the UK Commission. You cannot apply to both.
There's a question, applying for an LLM at Harvard. However, my acceptance of any offer would be highly dependent on funding I receive. I'm a little confused on what exact funding is provided by the Fulbright scheme. Do they fully cover tuition? Also, what does a living stipend look like? Is it partial, or would you be able to live off it? So as we've mentioned, the Fulbright Award is not for tuition. So the tuition fees that you'd be paying at Harvard would be something that you would independently need to be able to cover outside of your Fulbright Award. And as Dara mentioned, the Fulbright monthly maintenance rate that is used to calculate your award is something that comes out annually, provided by the State Department, and is based on the cost of living in the region that you're going to be affiliated with. So you would be calculated on a rate for the area of Boston. Dara, I'm not totally sure on what the current monthly rate is for Boston, but that is something that we would be putting to you when we make our award offer.
There, I was just going to add to that as well to
Yeah.
say, while an LLM at Harvard is going to be expensive, it's probably going to be well over $100,000. That'll be the fees for that. Just, I would say to that person, the anonymous person, to look at. We do have some other awards, a couple of which are actually fully funded, or 50% to 75% funded. And even the 50% or the 25% that you have to do is going to be less. So that's the thing. If you want to go to Harvard, it is expensive, and that's your decision to go there. So the funding that you would need to get is going to be, it'll need to match that. People who do go there typically either they have the funds or they take out a loan to pay for the tuition fees. But as I said, we do have agreements with other. If you look at some of the awards or the associated awards for LLMs, we have a new one with Boston College actually. So I would say also look at those and consider they're excellent programs. And in terms of diversity, the experience you might have, we would often say that you probably will have a significantly higher level of cultural engagement if you consider going to some of the other universities who are also at a very, very high level.
Question about, is the interview online or in Ireland? So for the Fulbright Irish Awards, you need to be not residing in the US at the time of application, and we do hold our interviews online. We do that to make it easier for everyone to attend. We've had great success with that, so you will be interviewed over Zoom for the interview process. And the next question actually is about who interviews, and that is a mix of our alumni, both from our Fulbright program, whichever one you're applying for, and it might be a US person or it might be an Irish person.
Sorry, that question is coming up again. This is from Dawn. So essentially, Fulbright covers flights and living expenses. Yeah, well, so the monthly management rate is effectively living expenses, yes.
And then there's an applicant for, or a question for applicants who are unable to contribute significantly to tuition costs for master's programs. How is this assessed in the award consideration? So the Fulbright application is for the Fulbright grant, and then the tuition costs would need to be addressed separately from the Fulbright application. That's something that we'd recommend you reach out to your host contact about. Typically for master's programs, there'd be a financial aid office or an international admissions office that you might be able to reach out to the school about additional scholarships or look for an additional award to help supplement that. And you can describe that if you're seeking another award in your application.
And Sarah, the flip side of that coin is a question here from an anonymous person. I have another scholarship that also contributes to my living expenses. Would that affect the contribution calculated by Fulbright? The flip side of the same coin is no, is saying effectively the same thing, but it's on the other side, so it wouldn't.
The main thing, Dara, I think maybe you can comment if I'm capturing this correctly, is that you just need to make sure that if you're applying for more than one award, you still are able to meet the program requirements of the Fulbright Award, which would be to be attending your orientation session, the award ceremony that typically happen in June, that you meet all of the J1 visa regulations, and that you're able to commit fully to being in that cultural engagement program. So you just want to bear that in mind if you're seeking another type of funding institution that requires other things of recipients of their awards. There's a question, do living costs include rent? So as mentioned, the monthly management rates are calculated by the US Department of State based on cost of living in the state. So that would encompass what it is to live there, the cost of supporting you towards your housing. For Fulbright Awards, you are paid in, if it's less than 14,000, one lump sum. And if it's more than 14,000, we pay in two payments over the course of the year. So you would be receiving a payment in a tranche or all at once. And that's for you to then manage yourself of how you allocate that payment out.
Gillian's asking the question. I lived in France for 1 year, 22, 23. Am I eligible to apply to the Irish Commission? Assuming that you hold an Irish passport, the short answer is yes. So there's a question that's coming up just about the 2-year home rule. The award ends after 10 months. Doesn't 2-year home return rule apply mid-course, or do you reapply to finish it off after the following year? What will change is where your host, your sponsor for that. So you may, for IE, is probably going to be your host, your sponsor in the States. You may need to change that, and depending what else you want to do, you may need to change your visa type. Again, your host institution, if you're in the States, will be best advise you what type of a visa you may need. There isn't a simple answer to that. It depends on your circumstances.
Yeah, so I would say make your application for the Fulbright Award, and then the rest of the visa requirements you can liaise with your host contact about that. But we'll see you through the visa process to get you started on your Fulbright Award duration. There's a pause in questions, so if anyone has any further questions, we are happy to address them from our FLTAs, any more scholar queries or student queries. Just pop which program you're applying from in your question if you can. And we also won't belabor the call if there aren't any more questions. We won't hold you on your lunch break here. If it's your lunch break when you're watching. We're always available for specific questions too at awards@fulbright.ie or by telephone.
Okay, Sarah, I'm going to do the final closeout unless I see a question pop up. I will say, just reiterating a few points. Okay, we do have a question from Orla, just in time. My host contacts are asking me about the length of stay. Is this something I decide? It is, yes. I mean, particularly if you're doing a
Oh,
research.
yeah, Dara, I think it would just depend on if it's a sponsored award or not. If it's a sponsored award, it might have a specific duration that you just need to be mindful of. Yeah.
Great. And the first part I was going to ask was just that it does depend on what you need to do as well. There are minimums as well for, 3 months to 10 months or 4 months to 10 months, depending on what you're doing. I'm trying to think, is there something else related to that I was going to say?
The length of stay, just the other question that we answered about that was sort of what's your date range? And that's usually from the 1st of September all the way to the 31st of July. So you just want to fit whatever preference you have for your duration. If it's the all disciplines, that's a 3-month minimum. So you can move that with your host along the timeline between the 1st of September and 3 months back from the 31st of July.
Great. And I'm just going to reiterate a point I have made before. Do give yourself time. Do give yourself time to adjust, and do give yourself time to leave as well. If you come to interview, you may find that we ask you the question saying, why did you choose that time? Can you go for, is there a longer period of time that you could or should? Again, that at an interview level, we might be assessing that as well. So consider that it's not just in and out. Really, it's a cultural engagement. So you do need time to spend in the US and be experiencing that. And I guess actually there was a question that somebody spoke about having an additional award going alongside the Fulbright Award, and Sarah answered most of that. I guess the last bit, just to put that, is that if the requirements of that award impinge on your ability to culturally engage and be in the States and have time and have those experiences and all that, well, that is something that we may question you about.
Great. And there's a last question here. You mentioned LLM courses that are fully funded by Fulbright. Just wondering if you had a link to those. We'd recommend anyone who's looking to apply to the Irish Student Awards for the LLM, check our website under the Irish Student Awards, and you can see the full details of the LLMs that are available and the specific funding benefits that are affiliated with those awards.
Yes, and you will see that some of them are listed under the associate awards as well. So you will find that they're very obvious. They're LLM. So there's the University of Pennsylvania, there's Notre Dame Human Rights LLM. We have Boston College Law School LLM, and then there's the I think, sorry, they're the ones that are currently live.
And just a question from Dawn, is it only LLMs or are there other areas? So the LLM awards that we're talking about are specific awards, and there's many other awards that are listed as well from different partners that have sponsored awards, and there's always the all disciplines Irish student category as well. So it wouldn't just be only applications for LLMs.
Okay, I'm just going to talk then just very briefly then about if you haven't started your application, I would say start it now. the questions. You may have additional questions. Give yourself a little bit of time to think through. The application process has been it's a well-trodden path. There's a lot of extensive information, so you should be able to navigate your way. Where you don't, do reach out to us. Do reach out to other Fulbrighters. Use every available support that you can in putting in your application. Start now. There is no it's a useful process. There aren't any downsides to going through this. If you decide ultimately not to proceed, that's fine. There's a lot of good information that you will have developed getting there. But I would strongly suggest, if you haven't started your application, do start it now. All of your questions, and maybe some of the questions that you're considering at this moment, a lot of those will be rationalized once you start the process. So do start your applications. As Sarah said earlier on, if you don't know where to start, just go to our website and start my application. Is really your starting point for that, and the information you'll send in is pretty extensive, and it guides you through every step of the way.
Yeah. And Dara, just I think to highlight a couple of the resources that are available on our website, you'll also find an FAQ tab where you can read through some of the common frequently asked questions. But once you register to start your application, you'll be sent a PDF of the application instructions and guidelines. And if you do take the time to go through that with a fine-tooth comb, there will be answers to many of your specific questions. And then some other resources that folks will have access to is our online YouTube library, where you can watch back webinars over previous years. If a question wasn't asked today, it may have been asked in a previous webinar. You might get a great answer. We have stories from our alumni that are shared in videos. And you also, if you're on a university campus within Ireland, you'll have your Fulbright Campus Ambassador as a resource as well. There's lists of alumni on our website. You can read their stories, their background, their research, and start to see yourself in that space. And as Dara said, there are no downsides to going through this Fulbright application process. We've had many repeat applicants. So if you have not been successful in securing a Fulbright Award before, we do welcome your application again. And if nothing else, it is an excellent exercise in viewing yourself in this space. And we really look forward to receiving your application.
My last comment is going to be just to say that we would strongly recommend people do consider all of the sponsored partnership awards that we have available, because the reality is that the All Disciplines Award can be, because it's so many areas come in under all disciplines, that can be quite competitive. You might find that if you're in a specific area, that might be an area that's suitable for you. You can look at a lot of the sponsored awards allow a lot of flexibility as well. So please do consider that. Okay. I think we're going to just leave it at that point, and thank everybody on the call. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Aoife. Thank you, Mary Kate, for support. Best of luck to everybody applying. We genuinely do want to see you on the flip side. So I think, Sarah, you've one final point to make, and I think then we'll close up.
Yes, it really helps. Just do track your recommenders status when you assign them as a recommender. Make sure that they get their letter of recommendation in by the 4 p.m. on the 23rd deadline. So if that's one thing you can kick off today, if nothing else, get those recommendations done and into us. Don't let that hold you back. Thanks, Dara.